I don't believe when people want to lump you in and say these negative things, because I've been watching, and I think if people do listen to what you say and they watch your actions, also you did leave the Democratic Party. I mean, that took courage, because you were. I mean, I think, they picked Kamala Harris over you because you would have outshone. You were a stronger leader. You're better than Biden. They can't have a VP candidate being stronger and better than the president. It's not going to work. But so I understand. I mean, you were right there. You were in the mix. You debated for that position. You were, but you left it because, I mean, you explain why you left the Democratic Party and why you're an independent now.
Well, the Democratic Party of today is completely different from the Democratic Party I joined 20 years ago. I didn't grow up in a family like some have in America where, my great granddaddy was a Democrat and my granddaddy, there was no legacy politics in my family at all. My parents were just like, hey, you think for yourself, you figure out, you figure things out for yourself. And so when I was 21 and I decided to run for office and I was looking at the form, which box am I going to check about, for which political party? And so it caused me to really think about and look at, what do these parties stand for? The Democratic Party and the Republican Party. And looking at the Democratic Party, both in Hawaii and then also, the party of JFK, the party of Dr. Martin Luther King. This was a party that I saw was a big tent party that was inclusive, that was welcoming of people who might have different beliefs on different issues, but who would take a stand for the little guy, and that was the history in Hawaii. Hawaii was run by wealthy Republican landowners for a long time, from its annexation, it becoming a territory and then becoming a state.
Right.
Up until and a lot of these landowners were treating the people who worked on their plantations like shit. But the living conditions, the pay, I mean, just they didn't have a voice.
Right.
And so it was the unions that came in and started to organize them because, one group tried to fight for rights on their own. And then the other group, it just wasn't working out.
Right.
So they all came together and they organized and they fought for basic rights to take care of these working people. And that's what shifted Hawaii away from being controlled by a few very, very wealthy corporate landowners to Democrat control. And it's been that way ever since. But that principle of fighting for the people and being inclusive and fighting for civil liberties and civil rights, I mean, that was the party of JFK.
Right.
And that was the party that I joined. You fast forward now to today, and really over the last few years, we've seen this just rapid spiral downward to insanity in the policies that the Democratic Party is pushing.
Right.
Everything from people who don't believe that we have the right to free speech, people who don't believe that we have a right to defend ourselves, people who, the Democratic Party is now the war party.
Right.
With this whole proxy war against Russia and with Ukraine, there's not a single Democrat in the House of Representatives or the U.S. Senate that's come out in opposition or even challenging. There was a small group of them that came out and sent a letter to Joe Biden, towards the end of last year saying, hey, all these flowery, like kiss-ass words in the beginning of the letter. And then finally it just said, hey, we really urge you to lead an effort towards a negotiated peace.
Right.
Because if this war continues, it's the Ukrainian people who will suffer, who will experience even more destruction and disaster and could even lead us to a nuclear war. They sent this letter out. It was made public. The very next day, barely 24 hours after, they retracted it because they got so
backlash.
much. Yes, the backlash was so strong. They chose not to take a stand and literally retracted the letter and made this weak statement saying, oh, well, of course they blame the staff. Oh, the staff sent the letter out or some crap like, dude, your signature was on the page.
Yeah.
You read, I hope you read it if you sign your name to it.
Right.
But ultimately their statement was something like, oh, well, we still believe in negotiated peace, but you should do it after Russia loses. Like, how can you be a logically thinking adult and think that makes sense? But, that is the Democratic Party of today. You look at the Republican Party. There's, a lot of warmongers in the Republican Party, just as there are on the Democratic Party. But at least in the Republican Party right now, we've got a growing number of voices who are challenging the war machine in Washington, who are standing up for the American people, who are standing up for our security, risking being attacked and smeared because they understand what's at stake and they understand where their loyalties and priorities should lie here at home.
And the threat to what we hold near and dear.
Exactly.
I mean, safety of our country.
Exactly.
And our people. Right.
Politics has become such a game to a lot of politicians.
Right.
We see during election time, people talk about, all the polls and the horse races and the this and the that, and you throw up the fancy board and it's kind of, you see a lot of those same boards on Sports Center, and they're talking about the football fields and the fantasy football and the stats and everything else. And, they lose sight that this is about real people.
Yeah.
And families and kids and communities whose lives are directly impacted.
Right.
Yes, by the decisions that our leaders make, but who those leaders are and what they care about and who they care about.
Right.
Recognizing, for me, drawing my strength and my happiness from doing my best to be of service to God is certainly what keeps me grounded and focused. Because I don't care what people on TV say about me,
Right.
Right. I'm not trying to win any popularity contest. And, I don't draw my validation from what people in Washington say about me or anything.
So yeah.
And it's why people say oh, how do you withstand these attacks? Because I've heard it all.
Right.
And I've gotten them all. And I wake up happy, because I have an opportunity with my life to try to serve, and I'm far from perfect. I'm a highly flawed individual, but I know that so long as I continue to try to do my best, that is where my happiness comes from. It comes from within. It comes from God, and knowing that no matter what happens, His unconditional love is there for me, for every one of us. And so, with God's love, what do I care what Nancy Pelosi thinks about me?
Right.
You know what I mean?
Right. No.
Or whoever, fill in the blank, talking head on television. And that right there is the problem, is so many people in Washington make their decisions based on, what other people say about them. And it's just sad, really. It's sad for them. Man, what a shallow life you must live.
Yeah. Approval ratings.
Yeah. But it's even more sad because of the consequences that the American people feel from those who care more about themselves than they do about the people that they're supposed to be serving.